welcome everyone. This is Raj Sharma. I'm the CEO and founder of Public Spend Forum. I'm really excited to help kick off this first edition of our eProcurement demo days. These demo days, if we could go to the next slide, please. We're kicking off these demo days as part of our larger focus on providing demonstrations of leading technologies through our ProTech Innovation Labs. I think we have some background noise. If we could look into that, please. Today, our goal of this series, if we could go back one slide, please. So the goal of this series is really to, one, give you a first-hand look at leading technologies. In this series, it's eProcurement technologies, and how these technologies can help you improve outcomes for you and your customers. Really, and also over time, better understand the technology landscape. We know we've had a lot of requests from people to both see the technology and understand the landscape. So this has really come about through your feedback. Ultimately, the last bullet point on this slide, determine how you can use these technologies to address some of the challenges and goals you may have. Next slide, please. So today, to kick off the series, we have Andy Eagle from SAP Ariba. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you very much, Raj. Happy to be here.
Great. So Andy will be, Andy, first of all, he works with Ariba's regulated industries, which includes government clients. He will be providing us a demo on Ariba's eProcurement platform, which I'm certain many of you have heard of or maybe even seen before, and show how it can be used to streamline both contracting processes, engage with suppliers, and ultimately deliver value to your customers. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So next couple of slides, just a brief overview of Public Spend Forum. Many of you on this webinar, I believe, are very familiar with Public Spend Forum, but we're a market intelligence and best practices platform. Please check us out at publicspendforum.net. You'll find both our library of content as well as other materials such as these webinars and podcasts that hopefully you can put to use. We really encourage everyone to listen and learn from others, and you'll find lots of content there. Next slide. And in case you haven't heard about GovShop, we recently launched GovShop, which is a market research and market and supplier research platform. There, we're really trying to provide you a very simple place to find and connect with suppliers for the public sector. For those of you that are also in state local, we'll be bringing on many different contract vehicles, for instance, that you can search by, like national cooperatives, as well as different codes like the NIGP code. And we've already loaded the platform with some of the federal taxonomies and contract information. So please check it out at govshop.com. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and really move to Andy and the demo for this presentation. Andy.
Thank you, Raj. One moment while we adjust the sharing.
Actually, Andy, as you get started, one thing I did want to make sure I mentioned to everyone that we really do want this to be very conversational. And so to the extent that we could really encourage everyone to provide questions online, we will make sure to respond. I'll be taking a look and trying to follow those along. And so we'll try to keep this conversational. So we please, if something's on your mind, go ahead and write it up and send it to us.
Thank you, Raj. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. I'm assuming you can see the slide on the screen that I'm sharing right now. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Andy Eagle, and let me first again say thanks to Raj, Anissa, and the Public Spend Forum for inviting me to participate in the Demo Day series. It's certainly an honor to have the opportunity to speak with all of you today and represent SAP Ariba. In my role as a solution consulting director, I've spent the last decade or so working with customers in both the commercial and government sector, helping them to understand how technology can enable procurement transformation. One of my primary responsibilities is helping to advocate and communicate Ariba's vision for better business process and better business commerce. And that certainly includes today's theme of streamlining contracting and the acquisition process. I actually recognize some of the names in the chat panel, and it's great to see you guys participating today. I also, given the number of participants we have today, I have to assume that some of you are unfamiliar with SAP Ariba. And so I asked Raj if it would be okay just to take 3 or 4 minutes to share with you a little bit about who we are and what we do. And then I promise we'll get straight into the demo and taking a look at the technology. But for those that aren't familiar with SAP Ariba, I think this slide, although extremely simple, summarizes our mission well. We are the marketplace for modern business. Our mission is making the strategic sourcing, contracting, and procurement process easier, smarter, and more transparent for our customers. It's critical now more than ever that procurement organizations adapt to today's environment, and that's certainly not a new theme. In fact, I was revisiting one of Public Spend Forum's inaugural technology symposiums from last year, and this was, the changing procurement environment and dynamics in the economy was something that Raj alluded to, and some of the speakers in that symposium brought up, and SAP Ariba is really rethinking how work gets done in that digital economy. There's certainly a lot of conversation about digital transformation in the economy and how disruptive technologies are having a profound impact on legacy business models. And you know what, we're in total agreement with that. How you manage, how procurement organizations manage their vendor relationship, their transactions, the business that they need to do with their vendors is no exception. So one of the things I talk about with customers is that digitizing basic contracting and acquisition processes, it's important. If you're familiar at all with strategic sourcing and procurement technology platforms, things like e-sourcing and centralized contracting repositories are important first steps, but those steps alone are not enough to truly get control of a supply chain and to modernize a procurement organization. We always say you need to shift your perspective to the bigger picture, which is adapting your organization to rapid change and digital transformation. And you need to find a technology partner that can help with that. And that's really where we come in. SAP Ariba integrates the entire buying process across your organization. We offer, and you're going to see some of this shortly in the demo, we offer end-to-end sourcing and procurement solutions that are designed to remove complexity and allow buyers and their vendors, their suppliers, to manage everything from contracts to payments in one place. And look, on the left side of this screen, there's a strong case for investing in the technology by creating more competition using cloud-based bidding and contracting capabilities like you're going to see in the demo. Our customers are capturing significant cost savings compared to what they were doing before the technology. And certainly by removing the manual and paper-intensive parts of the processes and leveraging an integrated business network, organizations can realize greater efficiencies in their procurement process. And going back to the procurement symposium that Public Spend Forum put on last year, I'm reminded of several of the speakers that talked about really impressive efficiencies like cycle time reductions and other gains they realized from implementing procurement technology. In fact, I remember a very specific stat because it came from one of SAP Ariba's customers, in which a legacy, purchasing request process that took anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, they were able to to reduce, at least for 95% of their purchase request volume, they were able to reduce that cycle time down to 24 hours. So, that's a great example of how procurement technology can have a profound impact on legacy business processes. And certainly the statistics on the right side of the screen, I'm not going to get into these today just because of our time constraints, but these are really a testament to the value that SAP Ariba's solutions help deliver. We are the world's largest business-to-business network, and an order of magnitude larger than several of the world's largest consumer marketplaces combined that a lot of us use in our personal lives when it comes to purchasing. Given my audience today, I thought it would be prudent to make a comment or two about these procurement solutions or modules that we're going to demo today in the context of the public sector. I briefly highlighted some of the value drivers that the solution enables, like cost savings and process efficiencies on the previous slide. But we know, of course, that in the public sector, government has additional needs, like you see highlighted on the screen, adhering to mandatory procurement and technical requirements, fostering business with diverse and DBE vendors, and ultimately ensuring public transparency and fairness in the procurement process. And these are all things that our solutions can help public sector organizations with. And just as kind of a table setting for the demo, I thought I would give you a bird's eye view of our solutions suite. This is effectively, how we do what we do. We offer a strategic sourcing suite, which focuses on, understanding the initial needs request and requirements from an internal stakeholder agency or department. Of course, any good strategic sourcing process includes good spend analysis, the ability to analyze historic spend and the existing vendor base, along with developing a sourcing strategy. And then this part of the application suite also includes two modules that we're going to look closely at today in our demonstration. One being our e-sourcing module to assist in the bid assembly and bid management process, evaluating vendor proposals, and ultimately making awards, contract awards. And also a contract lifecycle management module to support centralized contract repository, standardized contracting workflows and approvals, and an integrated clause library, and even more. We won't have time to cover it today, but getting back to my kind of big picture comment in the previous slides, we are an end-to-end procurement solution. In the private sector, we say, we're a source to pay application. And that means our solutions abilities extend into things like operational procurement, like ordering goods and services using a modern guided buying philosophy. And even continuing through an integrated payables process with integrated process flows like e-invoicing and working capital and payment capabilities. I think the thing I would share with you on this slide, and the thing that's important to take away, is one, all of these business processes are connected in an integrated suite. So all of the applications are tightly integrated, and they're all connected to our business network. And that's important because there is a related vendor process to every one of these capabilities today, whether that's, posting a solicitation, advertising a bid, or executing a contract, submitting a purchase order, receiving an invoice. Vendors have a big part in all of those processes, and having a pre-enabled, pre-established connection to your vendor base is a big value proposition that technology like this brings to the table. That's point number one. And point number two would be SAP Ariba is consistently recognized over the last decade by the industry in both the areas of strategic sourcing that we're going to be looking at today, as well as these downstream processes, operational procurement and payables, or the procure to pay process. And taken together, we believe that our position as a leader in both of these disciplines is a strong testament to our holistic approach. Final slide before we transition over to the demo. One thing that Raj and I discussed prior to the demo today, we've got a wide audience today, representatives from both government and I think a few private sector entities as well, and different levels of government as well. And in my 10 plus years of doing this, I've yet to discover the perfect demo process that kind of fits everyone's use case. So we're gonna stay pretty general in our flow today. I'm gonna be demonstrating capabilities from the eyes of a bid coordinator or sourcing specialist, somebody that is interested in creating, tracking, and executing solicitations. And maybe also through the eyes of a contracting specialist or contracting officer who is interested in how technology like this can help him or her author new contracts, amend and administer existing contracts, and some of the things that go with contract lifecycle management. So that's kind of the end user I've got in mind today, and the process we're going to walk through. Again, very high level, very general, but we're going to talk a little bit about how this application or these applications can assist in managing procurement requests. So the initial needs request coming in from stakeholder departments and agencies, and how you can use the technology to do internal collaboration, all the planning and requirements gathering that needs to be done before a formal solicitation process is executed. I'm going to take you through the e-sourcing capabilities of the system. So you're going to see how technology like this can aid and assist in bid assembly, getting requirements out to the market, and managing an open solicitation, and even some of the back-end analysis of a bid, how technology makes the analysis of proposals and ultimately the awarding decisions easier for contracting officers and bid administrators. In this flow, we're also going to take a look at contract authoring capabilities, so things like redlining and integration into a pre-approved, pre-authorized clause library, and even post-execution contract administration capabilities, so managing service levels and milestones associated with your contracts. I doubt we're going to have time. If we do at the end, I'd like to talk with you a little bit, maybe even show you a little bit about our vendor management capabilities with respect to self-service registration, qualification and certification of vendors. That's a huge value proposition and value driver for our customers today. I suspect we're going to run out of time though, so if this is something you're interested in and we don't get to it today, just send us a note through the chat and we'll be happy to follow up and schedule something with you. So with that, pardon me while I transition over to a browser.
So I think, Andy, as you're doing that, I was just going to chime in, and just for the audience, I think, knowing that we have people from federal, state, and local agencies, some of the terminology obviously varies from environment to environment, and so my thinking was, when I was speaking with Andy, that we keep it as generic as possible. Obviously, these demos can be much more specific to your organization if it was more narrower audience. So we've tried to kind of keep it fairly generic. So the terminology definitely will vary, and I just wanted to kind of caution on that as you hear it. But also, if you do have any questions along the way, please ask them, and we'll see if we can pause. We might not be able to get to everything, but we'll definitely follow up if we're not able to during the demo.
Thank you for that, Raj. Yeah, now I've already asked Yanisa if I don't take a pause here in about 15 minutes through the demo to interject, and we'll just let folks ask some questions. I'm not going to try to show everything in the application, obviously, today, but want to try to get through that flow we just described. So let's go ahead and get started then. So SAP Ariba, folks, is a SaaS-based solution, software as a service. So there's nothing to install here. I'm accessing the solution from my home office here with an internet browser. And we'll start with dashboards and kind of these landing pages that I'm looking at a specific dashboard right now. Most customers that I've worked with in both the public and private sector have multiple inbound channels from which they receive new acquisitions and procurement requests. These can range from things like emails and phone calls placed to the purchasing and contracts department, electronic purchase requisitions, even expiring contracts or system-generated demand, like an inventory system where stock levels have fallen below a certain threshold, and there's some sort of sourcing or quote request process required to replenish stock levels. Irrespective of how the needs request comes in, system is designed to capture requests and assist contracting and procurement professionals through the acquisition process. So like I was saying, we're looking at kind of a role-based dashboard for maybe the director of purchasing who's interested in tracking, important information about his or her role. There are a number of prepackaged best practice procurement reports that are available to me as the end user, and these dashboards are easy to configure based on the end user's needs. It's no secret that best-in-class procurement organizations leverage dashboards like this to aid in the contracting and acquisition process, and procurement leaders want to have information like this at their fingertips, whether it's information about active contracts that are currently being evaluated or leveraged throughout the organization. What kind of adoption are we seeing on those contracts versus agencies and stakeholder departments using local agreements versus a statewide term agreement, for example. What kind of sourcing activity do we have going on? How many open solicitations are being actively managed, and for which departments are those solicitations underway? The number of reports and insight is really limitless here. And as I was saying, these are configured based on my role. So whether I need to research historic spend in a given commodity or service category as part of my market research, or I'm amending an RFP timeline based on feedback from vendors that are participating in that RFP, or maybe something really simple, following up on a contract milestone, service level agreement, or maybe it's an annual report that a vendor needs to provide. A procurement dashboard like this allows me to efficiently access the information that I need and take appropriate action. And I'll quickly just kind of toggle through one or two roles to give you an idea of the flexibility of these dashboards. So switching personas, moving from maybe the director of purchasing to a category manager or contract analyst who's responsible for a specific category, like building and maintenance operations, facilities related spend. This is a dashboard that might be interesting to a person in that role, looking at historic spend tied to facilities related expenditures, HVAC maintenance, guard services, leases and rentals, maybe even construction type spend. All of that, historic spend analysis available at my fingertips. What type of contracts? Let me see if I can zoom in. What type of, what are our most active contracts in terms of spend with vendors in this particular category? So, we're going to focus in the demo on, executing a solicitation process and evaluating bids and awarding to contract, but there's a lot of capabilities here to help with upstream processes while you're doing, your own internal research and collaboration with stakeholder groups and doing spend analysis.
Hey, Andy.
Yeah.
One comment I had was that I think just for the audience, and some of you may have access to dashboards. We know sometimes really these types of dashboards are a challenge for many in just putting this information together. So I think that's one of the good, strong values here of any of these platforms. The other thing is just stressing the importance of this type of information that I think we know the best organizations run well, partly because they have real-time access to, key metrics, data, and so they can react from a performance standpoint, see where they're, doing well or not doing well, and make changes accordingly. So I just wanted to kind of highlight the, just stress the value of these and how.
Raj, you were cutting out there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes. So I just wanted to stress out the value of these and how these can be used.
Thank you. Yeah, great points. And as Raj was kind of reiterating the value of dashboards, I quickly toggled over to a different dashboard designed really for a legal stakeholder. That's oftentimes a department or stakeholder group that is very interested in contracting capabilities. And sometimes legal analysts and stakeholders have a very different view of the contracting process and contracting documents. And so this is a dashboard just illustrated to show how easy it would be to configure a dashboard for a legal type user, where I'm looking at contracting pipelines, what contracts are currently underway, what can I expect to hit my desk from a review and approval standpoint, and even kind of a micro analysis here, looking at the contents of our contract documents and related artifacts. This particular donut chart that you see me highlighting is actually showing specific clauses in our boilerplate template agreements where we've deviated from standard language. So maybe if I'm examining software contracts, the delivery and grant of licenses is a clause that oftentimes counterparties are taking exception to as part of their proposal response. And maybe there's some things I can do to provide alternative language in the form of a clause library to streamline that particular clause. So just an example of kind of the high level and very granular level reporting that you can get in a integrated procurement technology like Ariba. So before I get too far off course, let me jump back to my my initial dashboard here, and we're going to stick with the use case that I described. I'm the manager of a purchasing and contracts division, and on my dashboard is an action tile that tells me that I have some new procurement requests, acquisition requests that I can drill into that require my attention. So just by clicking on the action tile, I get a list of requests that have come in, and of course, I can configure this list based on however I want to see it. By requesting department, I'm just going to, for the sake of simplicity, let's just look at procurement requests that have come in from different agencies, different departments this week. And I'll take a look at the one here for building maintenance and operations, because I mentioned that's the one we're going to work on today, facility services. So this is a request form that our solutions can support for your end users. I'm not going to take you through the process of submitting a request. We're time constrained today, but just know that we enable non-procurement professionals, non-contracting officers to create a needs request that ultimately gets routed to the purchasing and contracts department, or whomever within your organization is responsible for triaging these types of requests. And don't get hung up on the fields that you see in the request form here. Every customer is different, to Raj's point. So one of the things we do during any deployment is kind of tailor the request form based on the customer's needs. And in addition to asking the end user or the requesting department for some high-level information about their request, I've also included a couple of specific tasks, notification tasks. We're asking the end user to fill out a quick set of requirements if they have them, just to aid in some of the internal requirements gathering and early stage parts of our sourcing and contracting process here. In this case, I've already assigned a procurement lead, Stefan Olsen here, who's responsible for engaging and assisting the internal customer through the contracting and acquisition process. And one of the first steps that the procurement lead would take is to create a workspace to support all the business processes that we're going to follow going forward. And we're going to leverage pre-approved, pre-configured procurement template capabilities in doing that. And so one of the primary benefits of procurement technology is eliminating, I mentioned this in one of my opening slides, it's eliminating as much of the manual, paper-intensive portions of the acquisition process as possible, while of course still ensuring compliance to your procurement statutes and policies. So a critical feature for any procurement technology is the ability to leverage pre-configured procurement templates in which the sourcing and contracting process, including the approval requirements, the contract documents and related artifacts, and even the team that I need to work with and collaborate with are already defined. So what I do on this screen, think of this screen as it's essentially a virtual interview process that the tool is configured to ask the procurement lead or the contracting officer for some information. And then what the application will do is pull together that procurement project, assembling all the documents and the workflow and the team that are required to support the process. And again, I want to stress, don't get hung up on the information fields or the types of questions that you see here. Every customer is different. And so these interviews or kind of creation wizards can be configured to match the appropriate business process. And I'll just walk you through kind of creating one of these things very quickly. We had a request for, building maintenance and operations. A lot of the metadata that was entered by the initial requester carries over to the procurement project. So I don't need to rekey data in, but as the purchasing lead or the contracting officer, I may be prompted for some additional information that, we did not want to burden the stakeholder agency or department with. And this form is dynamic, meaning, based on certain conditions, additional triggers may apply, right? So a good example, if one of my outcomes for creating this project, this procurement project, may be a new agreement. A lot of my customer organizations leverage fixed term agreements in their contracts, but I have seen customers in the past that use perpetual or auto renewal contracts in certain situations. And so I just use this as an example to show you how the form can dynamically change based on input that the end user provides, right? I change the term type from a fixed term to an auto renewal. The form automatically updates, and is it prompting for some additional information based on that condition?
So, Andy, and basically what we're doing right now is creating a description of what the project looks like. So in this case, what this acquisition looks like, and to a project plan of sorts.
That's exactly right. That's exactly where we're going, Raj.
Okay.
And some of these, one other point here before we move into the actual project itself, and I kind of walk you through some of the critical stages that this solution enables. Some of these project information fields may be required in systems outside of the Ariba application. We certainly don't operate in a vacuum. All of our customers have back-end legacy systems that sometimes need this information. So in the case of our building maintenance and operations project here, I have a subset of the information fields that are marked for integration with, in this case, my financial system is going to use these. So know that through application program interfaces that, your sourcing and contracting information entered here can, be consumed in external systems where needed. At the end of the day, though, the application is configured to present me with one or more procurement templates to choose from. And so, and these templates may present me with additional questions. Let's take a look at one here. The answers that I provide as the contracting officer may have an impact on the contents of my project. Like something as simple as, what exactly are we looking to acquire here? Is it building maintenance services or actually, goods, materials? The answer to this may impact or alter service levels or other, contract milestones that I want to, factor into my requirements. Another example may be, hey, look, is this acquisition going to include or potentially include a new vendor that maybe isn't under contract? And if I answer yes here, it may invoke parallel, vendor management activities inside of my project, things like self-service registration, certification, or even, onboarding processes like collecting a W-9 or bank account information from the vendor. So why don't we kind of fast forward to a completed project, and I'll kind of walk you through the different components of a workspace. And so this is effectively, if I would have clicked the create button on that creation wizard screen to set up the project, this is where I would have landed. And we use kind of this project-based collaboration approach for all of our procurement workspaces in the system. All of my project metadata, the information that I want to search and report on, the stuff that was powering those dashboard reports that we were looking at are here on the overview screen of the project. This overview section is a very helpful summary for your stakeholder organizations that you're supporting, as well as the leadership in your procurement organizations. It allows them to get a quick abstract or summary view of the project without having to go in and examine every document. I can get a quick glimpse of the procurement, the acquisition itself here, the major milestones in the life cycle of this project, and where we are in the process without having to go anywhere else. Raj kind of teased this a little bit as we were creating the workspace, but look, knowing when to complete a supplemental contracting form and where to find it, or knowing which approvals and authorizations have to be secured before posting a bid package, or even determining who signs a contract for different acquisition types is a tall task, even for experienced contracting officers. So for most of our customers, having a predefined path detailing the steps to take throughout the acquisition, including the order of operations, is a valuable proposition. It helps ensure compliance to purchasing policy, and it also provides a transparent, auditable history of what occurred throughout the contracting cycle. And that's something that I know matters to all of my customers in the public sector.
Yeah, and Andy, I'm guessing that you can configure this process any way you want, right? You could add in specific steps that if your organization had specific steps or forms to fill out, you could add all of those in here.
That's probably the most important takeaway here, Raj. Just like the creation screens that we use to create this procurement project, the important point is the right business process is enforced based on the template, right? Based on the conditions of the acquisition itself. So you absolutely have configurability here, and these steps are all conditional, right? It could be, if we're talking about a simple acquisition, maybe less than $5,000, you probably don't need to go through a super rigorous, open market solicitation and do all your internal requirements gathering and that kind of stuff. Whereas if we're talking about a multi-million-dollar engineering services bid, right? There's a different process for that. There's a more rigorous process with more stakeholder collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
The workspace is, dynamic in that way. And that's really what's going on here, folks, is we've defined a process to follow based on the conditions of the acquisition. And I can, move through each one of these. You can see I've already started my internal requirements gathering with my stakeholder representative. He's already filled out my high-level requirements collection form, and all of that is here. And now I've started to move into market research, leveraging dashboarding and reporting capabilities that we talked about a few minutes ago. And I'm to the point now where I'm ready to move into bid assembly, assembling a bid package and posting a solicitation out to market to collect vendor proposals. And before we do that, I wanted to talk about one more key aspect of this procurement workspace that we've created. One of the more common pain points for purchasing and contracts organizations, particularly those organizations serving the public sector, is keeping track of all the document artifacts associated with an acquisition process. This is probably a pretty decent representation of what a public process looks like, procurement process looks like. You have general terms and conditions, exhibits, scope of work, bid packages that contain specification documents and security questionnaires, and the list goes on and on. So the fact that this technology provides a centralized document repository that enables you to store and manage all the different versions of these procurement documents and to securely manage the access for multiple users is another big value proposition of the solution. And this is all, again, all of this is driven off of the procurement template behind the scenes that's been, configured with best practices, right? So you typically have, for most of my customers, you have a baseline set of required documents that are used in the creation of a procurement workspace like this. And just like the task tabs, the checklist that we just examined, certain documents may be conditional and only show up when a certain condition is met. In addition to the kind of standard forms and documents that are generated from the template, an end user can, of course, upload supplemental documents that are specific to his or her project. And lastly, with respect to kind of managing documents and document collaboration, end users can leverage libraries, sourcing libraries, and a contract clause library to supplement this process. So if we take a quick look at one of the terms and conditions documents that's going to be ultimately part of our bid package that goes out to market, you can get a look at some of the capabilities. Here we've got an example of how the procurement lead or the contracting officer has leveraged a clause library to kind of augment or adjust specific service levels or clauses in the standard terms and conditions. Because these are pre-approved clauses from our clause library, you don't need to go through or spend the time seeking additional approvals to modify contract language. Legal and compliance departments really appreciate a capability like this as well, since it really cuts down on the number of internal inquiries that they get within their departments. And as we move through, we're kind of pre-solicitation right now, making some adjustments based on the needs of my stakeholder organization. Even when I'm post-solicitation and I've made my award, we're still going to manage every document, iteration to iteration. So I've always got the most prevailing terms, accessible to me. And at any time, I can go back and compare, version 3 with version 1 to see what's changed. And that's what's going on the screen right here.
Andy, one question that came up from Tina Ray. I'm not sure, I can't find out which organization, Tina. Thanks for submitting. It was around risk management. Where is that handled I think I may know, but I'd rather you answer. Where's risk management handled throughout the process?
Yeah, great question, Tina. The short answer is there is an integrated supplier or vendor risk module tied into this solution. So at any point in this process, as we're kind of moving through, and I realize this is a generic procurement process from initial planning requirements and market research all the way down to contract closeout. But at any point in this phase where your organization has risk requirements, maybe that's an early phase financial assessment or security assessment of the vendor's capabilities, or even, post-contract execution activities that need to be conducted, whether it's monitoring risk-related events tied to that organization, financial risk, economic risk. There's a dedicated module designed to help enable the risk management side of the process.
Great. I just did want to say that Tina just responded. She's from the Washington State Department of Transportation Contracts Office.
Thank you, Tina. And Raj, this is a good place. I'd like to move into strategic sourcing and how the tool can help manage the bid package part of the process and a broader strategic sourcing process. But I think we've got a minute or two before we transition into that. If there are questions, additional questions about what we've covered so far.
I don't see any right now, but please submit. And as you do that, I think it's a good time check as well. We're about 13 minutes, but I think as you transition, Andy, I'll just kind of provide some context for the audience here as well. That as we're going through this, I'm certain that people are probably thinking about. I know I have questions about where does something like acquisition strategy fit in, right? Where do you get approval for that before you get into actually going out and issuing a solicitation, et cetera? Again, we've simplified this process here just to kind of make sure we can get through things in a demo, but I'd encourage you to reach out. We'll send out the information to Andy and others so you can ask them directly and they can kind of get more in detail with you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Kind of a critical part of the process, at least for certain levels of government, right? It's that pre-work that goes into any procurement process. In fact, I was working recently with a state government, a customer of ours. That was kind of the most important part of their process, is how a technology platform like Ariba could help with a lot of the upfront pre-work that needed to be done. And that's going to be a big focus for them as they roll out the application, is really modeling the pre-authorization of funds, making sure that those funds are available, collaborating on, as Raj put it, the sourcing or procurement strategy. What methodology are they going to use to fulfill the requirements, and obtaining internal sign-off and approval on that strategy before they move forward with things like bid package assembly and analysis and award. So these are absolutely things that the application can be configured to address. And yeah, I'll just reiterate what Raj said. If you're thinking about that and have additional questions, just submit them to us. We'll be happy to follow up. But let's keep moving here, as we've only got about 10 or 12 more minutes to wrap up. Part of my process, if we go back to the task tab here, after I had moved through the internal planning and requirements definition and completing my market research, was to either myself or in close collaboration with a bid administrator or sourcing manager, start to assemble all of these documents and put together a bid package. And that's exactly what this solution is designed to do. So I've got a link here in my documents to the bid package that I already have underway. And in this particular demo scenario, folks, these two projects are intentionally separated. So we have kind of a parent procurement project, and then off to the side or underneath that project are a couple of solicitation or sourcing related projects. And that was done by design. This particular demo example was set up more for a federal entity that had a term contract, but then underneath that contract, they had several sourcing projects where they were, enabling contracts at like a region or zone-based level. So this hierarchy concept was very valuable to them. It's not something you have to do, but it's important to understand kind of the parent-child relationship of these procurement projects in the system. And I'll just quickly pull up a solicitation that's kind of in draft mode. And again, the system is designed to take the end user, when it comes to bid assembly, much like it is when we create a sourcing or a procurement project, the system's designed to walk an end user through a step-by-step process to assemble an RFP or bid solicitation. So I'll just quickly walk you through these steps. Step one is pretty self-explanatory. These are the rules or the framework of my solicitation. Things like defining the timeline, right? When will bidding open? When are questions due? When will the bid opening occur? Essentially, when will I close the bid for responses and start my analysis? And every important, milestone in the solicitation has, unique settings like the ability to edit a notification and set reminders and alerts for prospective bidders. Just as a reminder, hey, questions are due in 7 days. Be sure to get those in. The bid is going to close in 10 days. Get your proposals in. And again, lots of flexibility here. This is an extremely mature solution when it comes to in-depth functionality. But the beauty of the maturity of this application, though, is that customers can pre-configure a lot of these settings. I'm exposing them for demo purposes here today, but a lot of my customers, make settings at a template level based on best practices. And, the bid coordinator or contract officer does have the option to make tweaks to suit his or her needs, but in many cases, the user is leveraging default settings established by the administrator when it comes to, bid rules. Inviting prospective and existing vendors to any bid is extremely easy. There are several ways to notify and invite vendors to a bid. You can start by adding your list of pre-qualified or registered bidders. I'll oftentimes refer to this as a bidder list in the public sector. This can be configured to actually show up automatically for the bid coordinator or the contracting officer that is assembling the bid. And I mentioned this earlier as a note. Ariba provides vendor self-service capabilities to assist vendors in registering and all the pre-qualification and certification processes that they need to follow in order to get access to your bid once you post it.
Hey, Andy, I have a couple of quick questions. I think you could probably answer them. I think one you just did. So one was submitted by Chris Ben, City of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and it's, does this platform include verified signatures for internal and external signers?
The short answer to that is yes. So this application, Chris, it integrates with, we have 2 e-signature partners. So when it comes to e-signing contracts and related artifacts, yeah, we leverage pre-integrated e-signature providers to support that.
Great, and I think you just showed the supplier kind of how you, send a solicitation to suppliers, but then 2 questions by Luke McDaniel from LA Superior Court are, will the e-procurement process be conducted on this system? Will vendors e-access the bid on this system? And does the system support a vendor database for e-procurements?
It does. So yes to all of the above, Luke. Great question. You're actually looking, this subset of vendors that shows up in my bid list here is based on my vendor database, right? So I had, 4 pre-qualified suppliers for this particular facility maintenance solicitation. And so the template is configured to automatically add them. I can also, invite additional participants either from my local database of suppliers that lives inside the SAP Ariba repository. I can leverage an offline template to import net new vendors if, I don't know, if I run into a group of vendors at, say, a trade show and want to incorporate them. It's very easy to add them on the fly here. And the third piece that I would add is a lot of, if not all of our public sector customers have requirements to advertise bids publicly. You can do that on the Ariba network, the business network we described earlier in our opening remarks. Some customers already have an existing website that they use for bid advertisements, and there's a integration to support that here as well to kind of create that bid posting or advertisement. Those are kind of the three ways to engage prospective and existing vendors in a bid.
Hey, Andy, just sorry, I know we're running behind on time check here. We're just about 2:56 here, Eastern time.
Yeah, I can wrap us up in about 5 minutes, Raj.
Great.
Okay. Final step, folks. Of course, we've already worked with our internal stakeholders to assemble requirements and incorporate any vendor-facing documentation as part of that procurement project. This is the final step. This is effectively what the vendor base is going to see and respond to from a proposal standpoint. And there's a ton of functionality here in terms of building the bid. Let me just collapse the screen here so you can kind of get an outline view. Of the solicitation, kind of section by section. And if we look at just general T's and C's, remember we were making some updates to the general terms and conditions in our procurement template, and we've included those T's and C's here as part of the bid package, and so vendors will be able to review those terms and conditions and respond accordingly as part of their proposal. Every question, every requirement that we ask has a set of attributes tied to it. And this is the value proposition here for you, the contracting officer or procurement lead, is the ability to kind of streamline responses. Gone are the days of sending out Excel spreadsheets and Word templates for each independent vendor to respond to. Here you've got the ability to kind of define how you want the supplier to respond. And you can give them as much flexibility or be very specific in the type of response that you want, whether the question is required or not, what type of answer are we looking for, even conditional logic to say, hey, this question should only show up if the previous question was answered yes. So you'd be hard pressed to come up with a requirement or question type that we couldn't support here. Lots to show here. We're really short on time, guys. So what I'm going to do is fast forward through the creation of the bid itself, and we will look at a bid that's kind of been completed already. So same requirements and specifications, but we've moved forward in time and vendors have completed their proposals. And Luke, the third part of your question that you asked is, hey, can vendors do their responses online? And the answer is absolutely yes. That's one of the many business processes that the Ariba network enables. We allow suppliers to view solicitations online and respond accordingly. And what you're seeing on this screen are a side-by-side comparison of vendor responses to both the functional, technical, and even non-technical pricing type responses in the bid. And if you're an organization that uses, scoring and vendor responses, just know that all of that can be, the automated scoring of vendor proposals can be incorporated into your bid in advance. So our customers find that this is, a big reduction in cycle time, the time that it takes to get a bid out to market, evaluate it, make an award decision, and finalize a contract. And that's what's, I realize I'm moving at light speed at this point, but that's exactly what's going on in this bid console as bids and proposals are coming in real time. As the bid coordinator or contracting officer, I have the ability to start doing, some analytics, some what-if type scenarios based on, my most desirable business outcomes. Am I looking to sole source? Are we looking to foster, maybe business with local disadvantaged vendors? And what these scenarios allow me to do on the screen is analyze the impact to business based on those award scenarios. I know I'm over time, Raj, so I'll wrap things up by saying in the application here, I've made an award to a specific vendor. And this would include all of the required award notifications and alerts that your organization has. The system supports that. And if we jump back to our initial procurement project, once that award was created, all of the details of this award solicitation, the awarded solicitation, flow through to my procurement project. And you can see, the financial and service level commitments that the vendor made in their proposal are incorporated into the procurement workspace. This is how we ensure compliance, and ultimately, your end users are paying the negotiated prices or rates for the goods and services that you've sourced. So that is, I realize it was fast and high level, but this is, this is just part of the application suite and how SAP Ariba sourcing and contracting can better enable your organization's, contracting and acquisitions process. Raj, I'm happy to hang out and answer questions if there are any.
Yeah, I think so. I think what we can do is we can officially say that. First of all, thank you, Andy. This was great, and thank you everyone for submitting your questions. What we can do is, I know there are a couple other questions, so we can actually maybe answer those as well. But this also marks officially the end of the webinar. But we'll hang out here and answer any other questions. So please keep sending them to us, and we'll answer them. So there's one here, Andy, from Roy Ditching. Does the process incorporate insurance management?
That may be a good one to take offline. At a high level, Roy, yeah, I have customers today that leverage the task capabilities of a procurement workspace to collect insurance and sometimes bonding requirements if we're talking about construction and related services solicitation. So if that's part of kind of the due diligence that your organization does in the acquisition and contracting cycle, yeah, there are capabilities in Ariba sourcing and Ariba contracts that support that.
Great. And then Luke has another question. I think he was hoping to see a vendor view of an eBid, but I know we didn't get a chance to do that.
Yeah, fully intended to do that, Luke, and just ran short on time. I can share my screen again if you're still on, Luke, and I'll be happy to give you kind of a quick preview of what the vendor sees. If that
Sure,
makes sense.
I think we can hang out for a few minutes. I know there's some people on there still, but
Yeah,
and then we'll go ahead and close out after that.
Yeah, give me just 1 second, Raj, and I'll start sharing again. So Luke and anybody else that's interested in this particular topic, what you're seeing on the screen right now is kind of the vendor's view of the Ariba network. And I'm kind of cycling through, it's a demo system, but I'm kind of cycling through different buyers that I'm connected with on the network. And part of the value proposition here is this is an integrated business process for your vendors as well. So for your organization, Luke, as a vendor, I see any open solicitations, RFPs, et cetera, that I've been invited to here. I also see, registration related information, that you're collecting from, if I've been awarded business, there's, probably an AP onboarding process that you've got where I'm providing W-9 and baking related information. But I think your question was specific to, the bidder console, what a bidder sees in the online solicitation. So if I just, let me see if I can click on one of these. This is what the bidder sees as they progress through a solicitation online. And note, this one is paused, so I don't have an option to download, but all of the requirements are presented here through the browser to the end user. I do have download options. They can download it and work offline, share with various team members on their side, and then import their proposal back into the system or work directly online. But effectively, what we were building on the buyer side as the contracting officer or bid coordinator, this is kind of the mirrored process on the supplier side.
Great. Well, I know, like any demo, we could probably do this. I've sat through demos for official bids, and they can be a couple of days long. So, so I know, Andy, your work was cut out for you here. But I want to thank everyone for joining, and please do let us know if if you have any other questions, etc. You can send them to us, and we will be following up and sending out both the recording as well as contact information, etc. So you can get directly in touch with Andy if you like. And we also encourage you to just check out publicspendforum.net as well as govshop.com and see how you can use those free tools that we've provided. Thank you again so much.